The burner phone buzzed against the bottom of the hollowed-out VHS case like a trapped wasp. Elias Carr stared at it through the dust motes dancing in his basement workshop, his soot-stained fingers frozen around the half-assembled furnace part he'd been cleaning. 23 years of marriage, and Mara had hidden this phone inside a copy of The Little Mermaid, their daughter's favorite movie from when she was 6. Elias pressed play on the first voicemail. "Baby, I can't stop thinking about last night. The way you touched me in that empty room at the care home. God, Mara, I've never felt anything like this before." The man's voice was young, eager, breathless. "I know this is complicated with your husband and everything, but I love you. I actually love you." Elias deleted the message. Then the next one, and the next. 47 messages total, spanning 3 months. His wife of 23 years, the woman who kissed his forehead every morning and complained about his dirty work clothes, had been screwing some kid named Jensen who worked at her facility. He walked upstairs to find Mara humming while she folded laundry in their bedroom. She looked up with that bright smile that used to make his chest tight with affection. Now, it just looked painted on. "Mara," Elias said, his voice steady as mountain stone. "How was work today?" "Oh, you know, same old stuff. Mrs. Henderson is getting worse, poor thing. And we had a new intake, this sweet man with dementia." Mara shook out one of his work shirts, wrinkling her nose at the chimney dust. "Honestly, Eli, I don't know how you stand being so dirty all the time." "Dirt washes off," Elias said quietly. "Most things do." Mara gave him a puzzled look, then went back to folding. "Lottie's staying late at school again. Drama club practice. She's so excited about the spring play." Misled, their 15-year-old daughter worshipped Mara. Always had. Lottie saw her mother as some kind of saint, working with elderly people, always smiling, always patient. She saw Elias as the distant father who came home covered in ash and grease, who spoke in grunts and spent his evenings in the basement workshop. "I'll pick her up," Elias said. "That's sweet of you." Mara folded the last shirt and kissed his cheek. Her lips felt like ice. "I'm making that chicken casserole you like tonight." Elias nodded and headed back downstairs. He had work to do. That evening, over dinner, Lottie chattered about her upcoming performance, while Mara made all the right encouraging sounds. Elias watched them both, memorizing the scene. His daughter's animated face, her mother's attentive nods. After tonight, everything would start changing. "Dad, you're being weird," Lottie said suddenly. "You keep staring at us." "Just listening," Elias replied. "You excited about the play?" "Obviously. Mom's been helping me practice my lines every night." Lottie beamed at Mara. "She's the best mom ever." "Religions, she certainly is something," Elias said. After Lottie went upstairs to do homework, Mara started clearing dishes. "Elias, are you feeling all right? You seem, I don't know, different tonight." "Different how?" Mara shrugged, loading plates into the dishwasher. "Quiet. More than usual, I mean. Just thinking about work. Got a big job tomorrow. The Hendricks place out on Mountain View Road. Their chimney hasn't been cleaned in 5 years. Discharged. That sounds awful. Tightening work," Elias agreed, "but somebody has to do it." Later, after Mara fell asleep, Elias slipped back down to his workshop. He opened an old metal lockbox he kept hidden behind paint cans and cleaning supplies. Inside, his old badge from the Harrisburg Police Department, a .38 snub-nose he'd never turned in when he quit the force, and a burner phone of his own. He hadn't used any of these items in 15 years. He powered up the phone and scrolled through old contacts until he found the number he wanted. Detective Ray Hawkins, his former partner, now retired and living in Florida. "Jesus Christ, Elias Carr," Ray's gravelly voice came through the speaker. "I figured you were dead by now." "Close enough," Elias said. "I need a favor, Ray." "After 15 years of silence, you call me at midnight asking for favors?" "I need information on someone. Young guy, probably mid-20s, first name Jensen. Works at a care facility in my town." Ray was quiet for a long moment. "This about your wife?" Elias had always respected Ray's ability to read between lines. "Maybe." Aggression. Called Eli. "I'm sorry. What do you need?" Background check, criminal history, current address, the works. You know I can't just, Ray. Elias's voice dropped to the tone he'd used on suspects back in the day. You owe me. Missions. Another pause. Ray sighed. Yeah, I do. Give me 24 hours. The next morning, Elias drove his work van to the Hendricks place. But instead of cleaning their chimney, he parked at the end of Mountain View Road and waited. At 7:45 a.m., Mara's white Honda Civic drove past, heading toward town. She was supposed to be at work by 8. Elias followed, keeping his distance. Instead of turning toward the care facility, Mara drove to a rundown motel on the outskirts of town. She parked behind the building, out of sight from the main road. 5 minutes later, a beat-up Ford pickup arrived. A young man got out, tall, lean, dark hair. He looked around nervously before knocking on room 247. Mara opened the door wearing a hotel bathrobe. Elias took photos with a telephoto lens he'd bought years ago for birdwatching. He'd never actually used it for birds. The motel rendezvous lasted an hour and 20 minutes. Afterward, Elias followed the pickup truck to get the license plate number, then drove to the actual Hendricks place and spent the rest of the day cleaning their chimney. The work felt good, methodical, satisfying, scraping away years of buildup, making things clean again. That evening, Ray called back. Your boy's name is Jensen Michael Crow. 26 years old, grew up about 30 miles from you in Beckley. Got a juvie record, shoplifting, vandalism, nothing major. Dropped out of high school, bounced around different jobs. Started working at the care facility 6 months ago. Family? Curtains. Mother died when he was 16. Father's in Moundsville Correctional for armed robbery. Kid's been pretty much on his own since he was a teenager. Current address? Ray rattled off an address in a trailer park. Elias, whatever you're thinking about doing, Islam. I'm not thinking about doing anything, Elias said quietly. I'm just cleaning up some messes. He hung up and went upstairs. Mara was already in bed, reading a romance novel. She looked up when he entered. How was the Hendricks job? Threatened, Elias said. 5 years of buildup. Amazing what accumulates when nobody's paying attention. Ugh, I don't know how you stand it. Elias started unbuttoning his work shirt. You get used to the smell after a while. The dirt, the decay. After a while, you don't even notice it anymore. Mara wrinkled her nose. I could never get used to that. No, Elias agreed, hanging his shirt in the closet. I don't suppose you could. Over the next 2 weeks, Elias established a routine. He would follow Mara and Jensen, documenting their meetings. The motel on Tuesdays and Thursdays. A secluded parking area near the lake on Saturday afternoons. Sometimes Jensen would come to the care facility after hours, and they'd use an empty room. Elias photographed everything. But more importantly, he listened. He planted a small recording device under Jensen's truck and another in Mara's car. The conversations he captured were illuminating. I feel so guilty about lying to Lottie, Mara said during one recording. She looks up to me so much. Baby, you deserve to be happy, Jensen replied. Your husband barely even talks to you. When's the last time he told you he loved you? Seizing. I can't remember. But still, if she found out, Mara won't. And even if she did, she'd understand eventually. You're a good mother, Mara. The best. Presumption that really caught Elias's attention. God, your husband is such a loser. Jensen's voice came through the speaker. I mean, a chimney sweep? What is this, Victorian England? Mara laughed, a sound Elias hadn't heard directed at him in years. He's not that bad, just simple, I guess. He's never been very bright. Ramifications. How did you end up with someone like that? I was young and stupid. Thought I could fix him, make him more interesting. But some people just are who they are, you know? Limited. Boasting. Well, you're with me now, and I'm going to show you what it's like to be with a real man. Elijah played that conversation 3 times, memorizing every word. Then, he deleted it and started planning. The first step was getting Jensen alone. That proved easier than expected. The kid had a pattern. Every Friday night, he'd drive out to a bar called Murphy's about 20 miles from town. He'd get drunk, sometimes pick up women, sometimes just drink alone until closing time. On a cold Friday in November, Elias followed Jensen to Murphy's and waited in the parking lot. At 1:30 a.m., Jensen stumbled out, clearly intoxicated. He fumbled with his keys, dropped them twice, then finally managed to get his truck started. Elias followed him out of town, onto the winding mountain roads. After about 10 miles, he flashed his high beams and pulled Jensen over. Jensen rolled down his window as Elias approached. "What the hell, man? You following me?" "We need to talk," Elias said calmly. "About what? Do I know you?" "You know my wife, Mara Carr." The color drained from Jensen's face. He started to roll up the window, but Elias grabbed the door handle. "Get out of the truck, Jensen." "Look, I don't want any trouble." "Then you shouldn't have been fucking my wife." Elias's voice remained conversational. "Get out of the truck." Jensen's hand moved toward the ignition, but Elias was faster. He reached through the window and grabbed Jensen's wrist. "I said get out." Sentencing stumbled out of the truck, swaying slightly from the alcohol. "Listen, Mr. Carr, I know this looks bad, but rehabilitate." "How long?" "What? How long have you been screwing my wife?" Sentence licked his lips nervously. We didn't mean for it to happen. It just... 4 months, Elias said. "I know exactly how long. I know about the motel. I know about the care facility. I know about the things you say about me when you think nobody's listening. I never said anything. You called me a loser. You said I was simple, not very bright." Elias stepped closer. "You laughed about it." Jensen tried to back away, but he was already against the truck. "Look, I'm sorry, okay? I'll end it. I'll quit my job, leave town, whatever you want." "It's too late for that." "What do you mean?" Elias studied Jensen's face in the moonlight. Young, handsome, full of the kind of easy confidence that came from never really being challenged. The kind of man who thought he could take whatever he wanted without consequences. "When I was a cop," Elias said quietly, "I learned something interesting about missing persons cases. Most of the time when someone disappears, it's because they wanted to disappear. They had debts or warrants, or they just got tired of their life and decided to start over somewhere else." "I don't understand." "People like you, Jensen. No family to speak of, no real friends, dead-end job. The kind of person who could just vanish, and nobody would be all that surprised." Drenhead's eyes widened. "You're crazy. You can't just..." "Can't what? I haven't done anything. We're just talking." But Jensen was already running. He bolted into the woods, crashing through underbrush in his drunken panic. Elias didn't follow. He just stood by the truck and waited. The screaming started about 10 minutes later. Elias had been hiking these mountains for 15 years. He knew about the old mine shafts, the ones that weren't marked on any maps. Deep holes in the ground, covered by rotting wood and decades of fallen leaves. Easy to miss in the dark, especially if you were drunk and panicked and running blind. The screaming stopped after about 30 seconds. Elias walked back to his van and drove home. Mara was asleep when he got there. He showered, washing off the mountain smell, and slipped into bed beside her. "Where were you?" Mara mumbled without opening her eyes. "Couldn't sleep. Went for a drive." She rolled over, pressing her back against him. "Love you." "I know," Elias said. Jensen didn't show up for work on Monday or Tuesday. By Wednesday, Mara was worried. "It's not like him to just disappear," she told Elias over dinner. "He's very responsible." "Maybe he found a better job," Elias suggested. "Young guy like that, he's probably got options." "Maybe." But Mara didn't look convinced. By Friday, she was agitated. She kept checking her phone, making excuses to leave the house. Lottie noticed. "Mom, you're being weird," Lottie said. "You keep jumping every time your phone buzzes." "Just worried about a friend from work," Mara replied. "He hasn't been showing up." "Maybe he's sick." "Maybe." That weekend, Elias started phase 2 of his plan. He made anonymous calls to the state licensing board, reporting concerns about patient care at Mara's facility. Nothing specific, just enough to trigger an investigation. He also began documenting Mara's behavior, her increasingly frequent overtime shifts that didn't show up on any official schedule, her new habit of taking pills from the medicine cabinet. Nothing illegal, just anxiety medication and sleep aids that she'd started using more and more frequently. Most importantly, he started recording their conversations at home. "Lottie, sweetheart, could you set the table?" Mara asked one evening, her hands shaking slightly as she stirred pasta sauce. "Are you okay, Mom? You seem really stressed lately." Kensington, "I'm fine, just work stuff." "What kind of work stuff?" Mara glanced at Elias, who was reading the newspaper at the kitchen table. "Nothing you need to worry about." "Is it about that friend who disappeared? The one you won't tell me about?" "Lottie, please. I said I don't want to talk about it." "Manslaughter." "Why won't you tell me his name? Why is it such a big secret?" Mara dropped the wooden spoon, splattering sauce across the stove. "Because it's none of your business. God, why can't everyone just leave me alone?" She stormed out of the kitchen, leaving Lottie staring after her in shock. "Dad," Lottie said quietly, "what's wrong with Mom?" Elias folded his newspaper and looked at his daughter. 15 years old, still innocent enough to believe her mother was incapable of serious deception. "Sometimes people go through difficult periods," Elias said carefully. "Your mother is dealing with some things right now." "What kind of things?" "Adult things. Nothing for you to worry about." But Lottie was already worrying. Over the next few weeks, as Mara became more erratic and distant, Lottie started asking more questions. Where did Mom go on her overtime shifts? Why didn't she ever talk about her coworkers anymore? Why did she keep checking her phone and looking disappointed? Elias answered what he could without lying outright. He was building a case, gathering evidence, but he needed to be careful. Lottie still loved her mother, still saw her as the perfect parent. That would have to change gradually. In December, the state investigation into the care facility began in earnest. Inspectors showed up unannounced, interviewed staff, reviewed patient records. They found several violations. Nothing major, but enough to require corrective action and staff retraining. Mara came home from work one evening looking defeated. "They're making everyone take additional certification courses," she told Elias. "And they're reviewing all our patient care protocols. It's going to be a nightmare." "Taxation. What prompted the investigation?" "Anonymous complaining. Someone called in concerns about patient neglect." Mara slumped into a chair at the kitchen table. 20 years I've been working with elderly people. 20 years without a single complaint. And now, suddenly, we're under investigation. Who would make anonymous complaints? I don't know. Probably some family member who's looking for someone to blame because their parent is declining. It happens all the time. Elias nodded sympathetically. "I'm sure it'll blow over." "I hope so. I can't afford to lose this job." Imprison wasn't lost on him. Mara was worried about losing her job due to anonymous complaints, while she'd been using that same job as cover for her affair. The care facility where she'd supposedly been working overtime, where she'd actually been meeting Jensen in empty patient rooms. By January, Mara was taking anxiety medication daily. She'd lost weight, developed dark circles under her eyes, and started snapping at both Elias and Lottie over minor things. "I think Mom might be having a nervous breakdown," Lottie confided to Elias one evening while Mara was upstairs showering. "What makes you say that?" "She cries a lot when she thinks nobody's looking. And yesterday I found her going through old photo albums, staring at pictures of us from when I was little. Maybe she's just nostalgic." "We're more than that, Dad. Something's really wrong with her." Elias considered his next words carefully. "Your mother has been under a lot of stress at work. Sometimes that can affect people in unexpected ways. Is she going to be okay?" "I don't know, sweetheart. I hope so." Reimburse. It was the first completely honest thing he'd said to his daughter in months. In February, Elias filed for divorce. He waited until a Saturday morning when all three of them were in the kitchen having breakfast. Mara was picking at a piece of toast, lost in her own thoughts. Lottie was reading something on her phone. "I have something to tell you both," Elias said. They looked up at him. I've filed papers for divorce. Lottie's phone clattered to the table. What? Rem went completely still. You what? Elias pulled the legal documents from an envelope and placed them on the table. I'm divorcing you, Mara. These papers were served yesterday. Threatened. Dad, what are you talking about? Lottie's voice cracked. You can't just... This is crazy. It's not crazy, Elias said calmly. Your mother and I have grown apart. We want different things. Mara's face had gone white. Elias, we need to talk about this privately. Presumption. No. Lottie deserves to know what's happening. You've lost your mind. Lottie stood up abruptly, knocking over her orange juice. Mom, tell him this is insane. Mara opened her mouth, but no words came out. She stared at the divorce papers like they were written in a foreign language. The papers outline my terms, Elias continued. I want primary custody of Lottie. I want to keep the house. I want Mara to move out within 30 days. You can't take Lottie away from me. Mara finally found her voice. I'm her mother. Are you? Elias asked quietly. The question hung in the air like smoke. Lottie looked between her parents, confusion and fear warring on her face. What does that mean? Lottie whispered. It means, Elias said, that we're going to let a judge decide what's best for everyone. Mara stood up so fast her chair toppled over. I need to call my lawyer. Would do that. She grabbed her purse and keys and headed for the door. This isn't over, Elias. No, he agreed. It's not. Unrestricted, Lottie sat at the table crying while Elias cleaned up the spilled orange juice. I don't understand, she sobbed. Why are you doing this? We're a family. Elias knelt beside her chair. Lottie, there are things about your mother that you don't know. Things that have been going on for months. What kind of things? I can't tell you everything right now, but I promise you, this is the right decision. But I love her. She's my mom. I know you do. And she loves you too, in her own way. But love isn't always enough. Over the next few weeks, as the divorce proceedings began, Elias started showing Lottie selected pieces of evidence. Not everything. She was still 15, still his daughter, but enough to help her understand that her mother wasn't the person she thought she was. He started with the financial records, the mysterious charges on their credit card statements, charges from the motel, from restaurants where Mara claimed to be working overtime. I don't understand, Lottie said, staring at the statements. Why would Mom lie about where she was? That's a question you'll have to ask her. But she wouldn't just lie for no reason. Jiang, no, Elias agreed. She wouldn't. The divorce attorney Elias hired was a woman named Patricia Wells, sharp, experienced, and known for winning custody cases. She reviewed his evidence with professional interest. This is quite thorough, Patricia said, flipping through photographs and financial records. How long have you been documenting your wife's behavior? Sentenced. Several months. The financial evidence is damning. The photographs are, well, they certainly establish adultery. But I have to ask, how did you obtain some of these recordings? I installed security cameras in my own home, recording devices in my own vehicles. Everything was legally obtained. Patricia nodded. Good. The opposition will try to claim invasion of privacy, but you're on solid legal ground. What about custody? Based on what you've shown me, I'd say you have an excellent chance of getting primary custody. Your wife's behavior has been erratic. She's been neglecting her responsibilities at home, and there are signs of substance abuse. Substance abuse? Patricia pointed to a section of the financial records. Regular purchases at 3 different pharmacies. That suggests she's doctor shopping for prescription medication. Elias hadn't noticed that pattern, but Patricia was right. Mara had been visiting multiple doctors, getting prescriptions for anxiety medication and sleep aids from each one. The court will likely order a psychological evaluation, Patricia continued, and possibly drug testing. If your wife is abusing prescription medication, that will significantly impact her custody rights. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for March. In the weeks leading up to it, Mara made several attempts to reconcile. She showed up at the house one evening while Elias was helping Lottie with homework. "We need to talk," Mara said when Elias answered the door. "We can talk through our lawyers. Please, Eli, don't make this harder than it has to be." Resign him, Lottie looked up from her textbook. "Mom? Hi, sweetheart. I just need to talk to your father for a minute." Elias stepped outside and closed the door behind him. "What do you want, Mara?" "I want to know what this is really about. We've had problems, sure, but divorce? Taking Lottie away from me? This is extreme, even for you." "Redemption? Is it? You're angry about something, I can tell. What did I do?" Elijah studied her face. She genuinely seemed to believe she'd done nothing wrong. Or maybe she was just that good at lying to herself. "You know what you did." "No, I don't. That's what I'm trying to tell you. If I've hurt you somehow, if I've done something to make you this angry, you had an affair." The words hit her like a physical blow. She actually staggered backward. "What?" "For 4 months, you had an affair with Jensen Crow. You met him at motels, at the care facility after hours, probably other places too. You lied to me and to our daughter about where you were, what you were doing." Mara's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. "I know about the burner phone. I know about the voicemails. I know about the things you said about me when you thought nobody was listening." "Elias, Simple. You called me. Limited. Not very bright." His voice remained calm, conversational. "You laughed about it." Tears started streaming down Mara's face. It didn't mean anything. It was just mirrors. It meant something to me. "Where is he?" Mara whispered. "Where's Jensen?" "I don't know. Where do you think he is?" "He disappeared. Right around Christmas, he just vanished. Didn't come to work, didn't answer his phone. The police said he probably left town." "Sounds reasonable. Young guy, no real ties to the community. Maybe he got tired of being someone's secret." Mara stared at him. "You know something. Imprisoned. I know a lot of things. Unresolved. What did you do?" "I filed for divorce. That's what I did." Rem went exactly as Patricia predicted. Mara's lawyer, a overworked public defender who'd been assigned to the case, was unprepared for the mountain of evidence Elias presented. The photographs of Mara and Jensen at the motel, the financial records showing unexplained charges, the recording devices that had captured Mara lying to Lottie about where she was going and what she was doing. Most damaging of all were the recordings from inside their home. Mara's increasingly erratic behavior, her angry outbursts at Lottie, her obvious substance abuse. "Your Honor," Patricia addressed the judge, "Mr. Carr has documented a clear pattern of deception, adultery, and neglect of parental responsibilities. Mrs. Carr has been using her daughter as cover for an extramarital affair, lying repeatedly about her whereabouts, and showing signs of prescription drug abuse." Mara's lawyer objected weakly, but the evidence was overwhelming. The judge ordered temporary custody to Elias, pending psychological evaluations and drug testing for both parents. Outside the courthouse, Mara confronted Elias in the parking lot. "You planned this," she said. "All of it. You've been planning this for months." "Yes." "Endanger my my job, life, my job, my daughter, my home. You took everything. You took everything first. I just returned the favor." "Turbulence, Jensen didn't just disappear, did he?" Elias opened his car door. "I wouldn't know. I'm just a simple chimney sweep, remember? Not very bright." Raining, Lottie asked the question Elias had been dreading. "Dad, did Mom really have an affair?" Jang were sitting in the living room, Elias reading case files while Lottie pretended to do homework. "Yes." Credibility? Saying, "With someone from her work?" "Yes." Lottie was quiet for a long time. "Is that why you're divorcing her?" "It's one of the reasons. What are the other reasons?" Elias looked at his daughter, really looked at her. She'd lost weight over the past few months, developed the same dark circles under her eyes that Mara had. The stress of her parents' failing marriage had taken a toll. Your mother and I want different things, he said finally. We've grown into different people. Unwilling can change back, right? They can write. They can work things out. Smashed. But not this time. Why not? No. Because some things can't be forgiven, Elias thought. Because some betrayals cut too deep to heal. Because I'm not the same person I was 6 months ago, and neither is she. Because we've both done things that can't be undone, he said. The psychological evaluation was scheduled for April. Dr. Sarah Chen, a court-appointed psychiatrist, interviewed both parents, separately and together. She also spoke with Lottie. After the evaluation, Dr. Chen called Elias into her office for a private conversation. Mr. Carr, I have to ask you directly. Are you hiding something about your wife's affair partner? The question caught him off guard. What do you mean? Your wife is clearly traumatized by his disappearance. She seems to believe you're somehow responsible. What do you think? Dr. Chen studied him carefully. I think you're a very controlled person. Methodical, patient, the kind of person who plans carefully and thinks through consequences. Is that bad? Not necessarily, but it can be dangerous when combined with a betrayal as deep as what you experienced. Are you asking if I hurt Jensen Crow? I'm asking if there's anything you need to tell me. Anything that might affect my recommendation regarding custody. Elias considered his options. He could tell the truth, that Jensen had fallen down an old mine shaft while running away in a drunken panic. It was technically an accident, though admittedly one that Elias had orchestrated. Or he could maintain his innocence and hope there wasn't enough evidence to prove otherwise. Jensen Crow left town, Elias said finally. Young men do that sometimes. They get in over their heads and decide to start fresh, somewhere else. Your wife doesn't believe that, misled. My wife is having trouble accepting responsibility for her choices. It's easier to blame me than to face what she's done. Jertz made notes in her file. What about your daughter? How do you think this has affected her? Lottie's resilient. She's learning that people aren't always who they seem to be. It's a hard lesson, but an important one. And how has it affected you? Elias thought about that question. 6 months ago, he'd been a mild-mannered chimney sweep who came home to a family dinner every night. Now he was sitting in a psychiatrist's office, discussing the disappearance of his wife's lover and the custody of his daughter. I've learned some things about myself, he said, about what I'm capable of when I'm pushed too far. What kind of things? That I'm not as simple as people think, not as limited. Triumph Dr. Chen's final report recommended primary custody for Elias, with supervised visitation for Mara, pending completion of substance abuse treatment. The drug test had come back positive for multiple prescription medications, anxiety medication, sleep aids, and painkillers, all at levels suggesting abuse. The final divorce hearing was scheduled for May. By then, Mara had moved out of the house and into a small apartment across town. She'd also been fired from the care facility after the state investigation found evidence of patient neglect during her final months of employment. She showed up to the hearing looking haggard and defeated. Her lawyer, she'd managed to hire a private attorney this time, made a last-ditch effort to challenge the custody arrangement. Your Honor, the lawyer argued, my client was going through a difficult period in her marriage. She made some poor choices, but that doesn't make her an unfit mother. Patricia stood to respond. Your Honor, Mrs. Carr didn't just make poor choices. She engaged in a systematic pattern of deception that put her daughter at risk. She used her child as cover for an extramarital affair, lied repeatedly about her whereabouts, and showed clear signs of substance abuse. The judge reviewed the case files, the psychological evaluations, and the evidence. His decision was swift and decisive. I award primary custody to Mr. Carr, with supervised visitation for Mrs. Carr, pending completion of substance abuse treatment and psychological counseling. After the hearing, Mara's family, her sister Karen and her mother, confronted Elias in the courthouse hallway. You destroyed her, Karen spat. She's a shell of herself because of you. Realms, please, Elias said calmly. This isn't helping anyone. She made a mistake. One mistake, and you ruined her entire life. One mistake? Elias raised an eyebrow. She had an affair for 4 months. She lied to our daughter repeatedly. She used prescription drugs to cope with the stress of maintaining her deception. That's not one mistake. She loved you, Mara's mother said quietly. For 23 years, she loved you. Jailed, Elias replied. For 23 years, she settled for me. There's a difference. What happened to Jensen? Karen demanded. Mara said he disappeared right around the time you found out about the affair. That's not a coincidence. Young men leave town all the time, Elias said, especially when they get involved in situations they can't handle. You know something, Karen pressed. I can see it in your eyes. I know that your sister destroyed our family. I know that she put our daughter through hell to cover up her affair. And I know that sometimes people face consequences for their actions. Are you threatening us? I'm stating facts. Mara's mother stepped between them. This has to stop. The fighting, the accusations. Lottie needs both her parents. Lottie has a parent, Elias said quietly. She has me. That summer, Elias and Lottie settled into a new routine. She spent weekends with Mara under supervised visitation. But the rest of the time, it was just the two of them. Lottie had changed. The bright, trusting 15-year-old had been replaced by someone more cautious, more aware of the complexities of adult relationships. She asked hard questions now. Dad, do you think Mom ever loved us? Really loved us? They were sitting on the back porch after dinner, watching fireflies dance in the gathering dusk. I think she loved the idea of us, Elias said. The picture-perfect family. But loving an idea isn't the same as loving the people in it. I used to think she was perfect, like the perfect mother. Nobody's perfect, sweetheart. Were you happy? Before you found out about the affair, I mean. Elias considered the question. I thought I was, but looking back, I think I was just existing, going through the motions. Entrusted. Are you happier now? That was a harder question. Was he happier? Or was he just satisfied with the outcome of his careful planning? I'm at peace, he said finally. That's not the same thing as happy, but it's something. In August, Carlene Whitaker, Mara's former best friend, showed up at Elias's house unannounced. We need to talk, Carlene said when he answered the door. About what? About what really happened to Jensen Crow. Elias stepped outside and closed the door behind him. Lottie was inside doing homework, and he didn't want her overhearing this conversation. Jensen left town. End of story. Bullshit. Carlene's face was flushed with anger. I know you did something to him. Based on what evidence? Based on the fact that Mara is convinced you killed him. And frankly, so am I. Elias studied Carlene's face. She'd been helping Mara cover up the affair, providing alibis, making excuses. She was complicit in the deception. Carlene, you helped my wife lie to me and to our daughter for months. You don't have the moral authority to accuse me of anything. She was my friend. She was unhappy, and I wanted to help her. You wanted to help her cheat on her husband and lie to her child. It wasn't that simple. It was exactly that simple. She asked you to help her betray her family, and you said yes. Carlene's voice cracked. She's falling apart, Elias. She's not eating, barely sleeping. She's convinced you're going to come after her next. Why would I come after her? I already have everything I want. Disarm. Do you? Or are you planning to finish what you started? Elias stepped closer to Carlene. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Let me tell you something about finishing what I started. I wanted my wife to understand what it felt like to lose everything that mattered to her. I wanted her to know what betrayal tasted like. And I wanted my daughter to see her mother for who she really was. Carlene backed away from him. I accomplished all of that without laying a finger on anyone. So no, Carlene, I'm not planning to come after Mara. I don't need to. She destroyed herself. What about Jensen? What about him? Did you kill him? Elias smiled, a cold, humorless expression. Jensen Crow was a coward who got in over his head and ran away when things got complicated. That's the official story, and I'm sticking to it. After Carlene left, Elias went back inside to find Lottie standing in the hallway. Who was that? She asked. Mrs. Whitaker, she wanted to talk about your mother. What about her? She's concerned. She thinks your mother is having a hard time adjusting to the divorce. Lottie nodded slowly. She is. Last weekend, she cried the whole time I was there. She kept asking me if I blamed her for what happened. What did you tell her? I told her the truth, that I was angry at first, but now I just feel sorry for her. Disregay for her. Notto, because she gave up everything for someone who didn't even stick around to face the consequences with her. That's really sad. Elias felt a surge of pride in his daughter's insight. She was learning to see through people's actions, to their true motivations. Yes, he agreed. It is sad. That fall, Lottie started her junior year of high school. She'd grown more serious, more focused. Her grades improved, and she started talking about college plans. I want to study psychology, she told Elias one evening. I want to understand why people do the things they do. That's a good field, important work. Like why Mom had the affair, why she chose to risk everything for someone she barely knew. What do you think? Lottie considered the question. I think she was lonely. I think she felt like her life was boring, and Jensen made her feel special. And was that worth destroying our family? Rectangular. But I don't think she thought it through that far. She was just living in the moment, not thinking about consequences. What about Jensen? Why do you think he got involved with a married woman? Gentleman. Because he was selfish. He wanted what he wanted, and he didn't care who got hurt. Elias nodded. That's a very mature way to look at it. Do you think he'll ever come back? No, Elias said with absolute certainty. I don't think we'll ever see Jensen Crow again. Persecution. There was another development. Mara's ex-supervisor at the care facility, a woman named Janet Mills, called Elias at home. Mr. Carr, I hope you don't mind me calling. I got your number from the phone book. What can I do for you, Ms. Mills? It's about your ex-wife, and about some things I discovered after she was terminated. What kind of things? I'd rather not discuss this over the phone. Could we meet somewhere? They met at a diner on the outskirts of town. Janet was a heavy-set woman in her 50s with graying hair and tired eyes. I've been debating whether to come forward with this, she said, stirring sugar into her coffee. But I think you have a right to know. Restricting know what? About what Mara and Jensen were doing at the facility. It was worse than just using empty rooms for their affair. Elias waited. They were stealing from the patients. Nothing big. Personal items, small amounts of cash. Things that confused elderly people might not notice or might assume they'd misplaced. You have proof of this? Security footage. I found it after they were both gone, when I was reviewing tapes for the state investigation. Janet pulled out a manila envelope and slid it across the table. Copies of the relevant footage, and documentation of missing items that corresponded with their shifts. Elias opened the envelope and examined the contents. Photos printed from security footage showed Mara and Jensen in patients' rooms, going through drawers and personal belongings. Why are you showing me this? Because I felt guilty. I liked Mara, thought she was a good employee. When she started acting erratic, I assumed it was just personal problems. I didn't realize she was stealing from vulnerable people. Stimulate this to the police? Reported this to the police? Not yet. I wanted to talk to you first. Elias studied the photos more carefully. In one, Mara was slipping something into her pocket while an elderly man slept in his bed. In another, Jensen was rifling through a woman's purse while Mara stood watch. How long was this going on? Based on the timestamps, at least 3 months. Probably longer. Elias thought about Lottie, about how she defended her mother even after learning about the affair. How would she react to learning that Mara had been stealing from elderly patients? What do you want from me? He asked Janet. I want to know if I should report this. If it'll help your custody case, maybe it's worth pursuing. But if it'll just cause more pain for your daughter, Elias closed the envelope. Keep the evidence. File it away somewhere safe. But don't report it unless you have to. Quist. Why not? Because some truths are too heavy for a 16-year-old to carry. That decision would prove to be a mistake. 2 weeks later, Mara showed up at the house drunk and belligerent. Elias was at work, and Lottie was home alone. "Where is he?" Mara demanded when Lottie opened the door. "Dad's at work." "Mom, are you okay? You smell like—" "I know what I smell like." Mara pushed past Lottie into the house. "I need to talk to your father." "Maybe you should come back when you're feeling better." "I'm feeling fine." Lied to and manipulated and destroyed by the person who was supposed to love her. Lottie backed away from her mother. This wasn't the sad, defeated woman from their supervised visits. This was someone else entirely. Angry, volatile, unpredictable. "He killed him," Mara continued, pacing around the living room. "Your father killed Jensen, and everyone's just pretending it didn't happen." "Mom, that's crazy. Dad wouldn't—" "Wouldn't what? Wouldn't hurt someone who crossed him? You don't know your father as well as you think you do." Mara stopped pacing and stared at her daughter. "You want to know what your precious father used to do for a living before he became a chimney sweep? He worked for the police department. He told me. He was a cop, yes. But do you know why he stopped being a cop?" Lottie shook her head. "Because he killed someone, a suspect who was running away. Shot him in the back and claimed it was self-defense." "That's not true." "Internal Affairs investigated him for 3 months. He resigned before they could fire him." Roplai's face went white. "You're lying." "Am I? Ask him. Ask your father to tell you about Marcus Webb." Mar headed for the door, then turned back. "Your father isn't the man you think he is, sweetheart. He's dangerous. And if you're smart, you'll remember that." After Mara left, Lottie called Elias at work. "Dad, you need to come home. Mom was here, and she was drunk, and she said some things." "What kind of things?" "About when you were a police officer. About someone named Marcus Webb." Elias was quiet for a long moment. "I'll be right home." Relinqui arrived. Lottie was sitting on the couch, hugging a pillow to her chest. "Is it true?" she asked without preamble. "Did you kill someone when you were a cop?" Elias sat down beside her. "Yes." "Unmistake. Said you shot him in the back while he was running away." "Reimburse. Your mother is drunk and angry. She's trying to hurt me by hurting you." Seizing. "But did you shoot someone?" "Terminals. Yes, I did." Lottie's eyes filled with tears. "Why?" Elias ran a hand through his hair. He'd hoped to never have this conversation, especially not under these circumstances. Marcus Webb was a drug dealer who'd been selling the kids at the local high school. When we tried to arrest him, he ran. He had a gun, and he was heading toward a playground where children were playing. "So you shot him?" "I made a decision to stop him before he could hurt innocent people." "Internal Affairs investigated you." "Did. Anytime an officer discharges his weapon, there's an investigation. It's standard procedure." Elias hesitated. "The investigation concluded that I acted within department guidelines." It was technically true, but it left out important details. The investigation had been contentious. Some witnesses claimed Webb hadn't been armed. Others said he was running away from the playground, not toward it. In the end, the department had accepted Elias's version of events, but the whole thing had left a bad taste in everyone's mouth. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" Disregast. "Because it's not something I'm proud of. Taking a life, even in the line of duty, changes you." "Is that why you became a chimney sweep? To get away from that life?" "Partly, yes." Elias was quiet for a long time, processing this information. "Mom thinks you killed Jensen," she said finally. "I know she does." "Did you?" Elias looked at his daughter, really looked at her. She was 16 now, old enough to handle difficult truths. But some truths were more dangerous than others. "Jensen Crow left town," he said carefully. "He got involved in a situation he couldn't handle, and he ran away. That's what cowards do." "But you know more than you're saying." "Constituted. I know that Jensen was a selfish young man who destroyed our family for his own gratification. I know that he abandoned your mother when things got complicated. And I know that some people get exactly what they deserve. Punishment. That's not really an answer. It's the only answer you're going to get." The following week, Mara's supervised visitation was suspended after she failed a court-ordered drug test. She'd been drinking heavily and mixing alcohol with prescription medication. Lottie took the news badly. "She's falling apart," she told Elias, "and it's because of what we did to her." Trespass. What we did to her? The divorce, the custody battle, taking away her visitation rights. We destroyed her. Lottie, your mother destroyed herself. We just refused to enable her anymore. Righteous. But she's still my mom. Will always be your mom. But being someone's mother doesn't give you the right to lie, cheat, and manipulate without consequences. What if she hurts herself? Shelter. It was a valid concern. Mara's behavior had become increasingly erratic and self-destructive. I'll call her sister. Ask Karen to check on her. Will you call her directly, just to make sure she's okay? Elias considered it. He had no desire to speak with Mara, but Lottie was worried, and that was enough. I'll call her tonight. Mara answered on the first ring, as if she'd been waiting by the phone. Elias? Lottie's worried about you. Is she? Mara's voice was slurred. That's nice. Someone still cares. Mara, you need to get help. Real help. I need my daughter back. You need to stop drinking and get into a treatment program. If you do that, we can talk about reinstating supervised visitation. I need to know what happened to Jensen. Jensen is gone. He's not coming back. You need to accept that and move on. Minecraft. I can't move on, not knowing if you... Chlorosis. If I what? If I killed him? Is that what you want to hear? Mara was quiet. You want me to confess to something so you can feel better about the choices you made. So you can tell yourself that I'm the villain in this story instead of taking responsibility for what you did. Did you kill him? Does it matter? He's gone either way. It matters to me. Why? Because you loved him? Because you were planning to leave me for him? Trembling. Because I need to know who I was married to for 23 years. Elias thought about that. You were married to someone who loved you enough to forgive almost anything. But almost is the key word. Kang, and now? Now you're divorced from someone who learned not to forgive anything. He hung up before she could respond. That winter, Mara was arrested for driving under the influence. She'd crashed her car into a tree on Mountain View Road, the same road where Elias had confronted Jensen 2 years earlier. She wasn't seriously injured, but the arrest triggered a violation of her probation terms. She was sentenced to 30 days in jail and mandatory substance abuse treatment. Lottie visited her once, against Elias's advice. How was she? He asked when Lottie came home. Broken, Lottie said simply. She looks like she's aged 10 years. Did she say anything about Jensen? Yeah. She asked me if I thought you were capable of murder. What did you tell her? Manslaughter. I told her that everyone is capable of anything under the right circumstances. Alang Elias felt another surge of pride in his daughter's wisdom. That's a very mature answer. She also asked me to forgive her, for the affair, for lying, for everything. Expelled? I told her I already had. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and it doesn't mean trusting someone again. That spring, Mara completed her treatment program and petitioned the court for reinstatement of visitation rights. The judge agreed to supervised visits twice a month. The first visit was awkward and stilted. Mara looked healthier. She'd gained back some weight and the dark circles under her eyes had faded. But there was a distance between her and Lottie that hadn't been there before. You've grown up so much, Mara said, reaching across the table to touch Lottie's hand. Lottie didn't pull away, but she didn't lean into the touch either. It's been almost a year, Mom. I know. I'm sorry I missed so much. You didn't miss it. You threw it away. The words hung in the air between them. The court supervisor, a middle-aged woman named Mrs. Patterson, made notes in her file. I'm trying to make things right, Mara said. I'm sober now. I'm getting help. That's good. I'm glad. Do you think we can have a relationship again? A real relationship? Lottie considered the question. I don't know. Maybe. But it won't be the same as before. I know that. Do you? Because before I thought you were perfect. I thought you could do no wrong. Now I know you're just a person who makes bad choices sometimes. Sometimes? Unmistaka. Okay, a lot of the time. Mara's eyes filled with tears. I love you, sweetheart. That never changed. I love you too, but love isn't enough anymore. Disrupting the following months, Mara and Lottie slowly rebuilt their relationship. It was tentative, careful. Nothing like the easy affection they'd shared before. But it was something. Mara never stopped asking about Jensen, though. During every visit, she'd find a way to bring him up. Have you heard anything? Any word about where he might have gone? Mom, it's been almost 3 years. If he was going to contact you, he would have by now. Unleashed, he can't. Relinquit, he doesn't want to. The conversation would always end the same way, with Mara looking defeated and Lottie changing the subject. On a cold Saturday morning in November, 3 years after Jensen's disappearance, 2 hunters found human remains in an old mine shaft, about 15 miles from town. The local police called it in to the State Bureau of Investigation. Within a week, dental records confirmed what everyone suspected. The remains belonged to Jensen Michael Crow. Detective Ray Hawkins, Elias's old partner, called him personally. They found him, Eli. Forgiveness. Found who? Don't play dumb. Jensen Crow. He's been dead for 3 years at the bottom of a mine shaft. That's unfortunate. Trembling, that's all you have to say? Want me to say, Ray, that I'm surprised? Young men die in these mountains all the time. Hunting accidents, falls, exposure. It's dangerous terrain. This wasn't an accident. The medical examiner found evidence of blunt force trauma to the skull. Elias was quiet. They're going to investigate this as a homicide, and your name is going to come up. Based on what evidence? Based on the fact that you asked me to run a background check on him right before he disappeared. Based on the fact that your wife was having an affair with him. Based on the fact that you had motive, means, and opportunity. Trang all circumstantial, but it's enough to get a warrant to search your property. Let them search. They won't find anything. Eli, listen to me. If you did this, in prison, I didn't do anything, Ray. Jensen Crow was a drug-addled loser who probably fell down that mine shaft while high or drunk or both. Tangled. The medical examiner says the skull fracture came from a blunt instrument, probably a hammer or a wrench. Regazzle easy to lose in these mountains, especially if you're panicked and running from something. Ray sighed. They're going to arrest you, Eli. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but they're going to arrest you. Imprisonment. We'll see. The search warrant was executed on a Tuesday morning. A dozen state investigators spent 6 hours going through Elias's house, workshop, and vehicles. They found nothing incriminating. Lottie, now 18 and preparing for college, watched the search with calm detachment. Are you worried? She asked Elias as they sat on the front porch, watching investigators load boxes into their van. About what? About them finding something. There's nothing to find. Because you didn't do it. Or because you were careful. Elias looked at his daughter. She was an adult now, legally if not emotionally. She deserved an honest answer. Because I'm very good at cleaning up messes. That's not really an answer either. Relinquit's the only answer you need. Alice, the investigators, questioned Elias 3 times over the next month. Each time, he told the same story. He'd never met Jensen Crow, had no contact with him, and knew nothing about his disappearance. The polygraph test was inconclusive. Elias's heart rate remained steady throughout, his breathing normal, his responses consistent. Either he was telling the truth, or he was exceptionally good at lying. In the end, they couldn't build a case. The evidence was all circumstantial. The motive was clear but not unique. And Elias had no verifiable contact with Jensen before his disappearance. The case remained open but inactive. Mara, meanwhile, fell apart completely when she learned about Jensen's death. She'd held on to hope for 3 years that he was alive somewhere, that he'd chosen to leave rather than being forced to, learning that he'd been dead all along, that her lover had died alone in a dark hole in the ground, shattered whatever stability she'd managed to rebuild. She started drinking again, missed her court-ordered counseling sessions, and violated the terms of her visitation agreement. The last time Lottie saw her mother, Mara was sitting in her car outside Lottie's high school, drunk and crying. "He's dead," Mara said when Lottie approached the car. "Jensen's dead, and your father killed him." "Mom, you can't be here. If your probation officer finds out, I don't care anymore. I don't care about anything. You should care about me." Mara looked at her daughter with unfocused eyes. "You chose him. You chose your father over me. I chose the parent who didn't lie to me for months. I chose the parent who didn't steal from elderly people." Mara's face went white. "What did you say?" "I know about the care facility, Mom. I know what you and Jensen were doing there." "How do you know that?" "Dad told me. He has security footage of you stealing from patients. He's been investigating me. All this time, he's been building a case against me. He's been protecting me from the truth about who you really are." Blackmail started the car. "I should have left him years ago. I should have taken you and left. But you didn't. And now, it's too late." That was the last conversation Lottie ever had with her mother. 3 days later, Mara drove her car into the Kanawha River. Her body was found 2 weeks later, 5 miles downstream. The suicide note was brief. "I can't live with what I've done, and I can't live with what's been done to me. Take care of our daughter." The funeral was small, just Lottie, Elias, and a few of Mara's family members. Karen, Mara's sister, blamed Elias for everything. "You killed her," Karen said at the graveside. "Maybe not with your own hands, but you killed her just the same." "Mara killed herself," Elias replied quietly. "She made that choice. After you destroyed her life, after you took away everything she cared about, I took away the things she threw away first. And Jensen? Did he throw his life away too?" Elias met Karen's eyes. "Jensen got exactly what he deserved." James heard, "A monster." "Maybe, but I'm an honest monster." Relinquished after the funeral, Lottie and Elias drove home in silence. The house felt different now. Not just quiet, but empty in a way it had never been before. "Do you miss her?" Lottie asked as they sat in the living room. "I miss the person I thought she was." "Trespass? Do you regret any of it? The divorce, the custody battle, everything that happened?" Elias considered the question. "I regret that it was necessary. But no, I don't regret doing what I had to do to protect our family. Our family is just us now. Seizing, that's enough." Jiang went to college that fall, majoring in psychology as she'd planned. She came home for holidays and summers, but the house felt even emptier when she was gone. Elias continued working as a chimney sweep. He was good at it, thorough, reliable, methodical. People trusted him with their homes, their safety. He never remarried, never even dated. When people asked why, he'd say he was too set in his ways, too used to being alone. The truth was simpler. He'd learned that he was capable of things that would frighten most people. He'd learned that when pushed far enough, he could become someone cold and calculating and utterly without mercy. Some people weren't meant to share their lives with others. Some people were too dangerous to love. 5 years after Mara's death, Lottie graduated from college and moved back home. She'd decided to pursue graduate school locally, specializing in family therapy. "I want to help people who are going through what we went through," she told Elias. "Families dealing with betrayal, divorce, loss. That's good work. Are you proud of me?" "I've always been proud of you." They were sitting on the back porch watching the sun set over the mountains. It was peaceful, quiet, the kind of evening that made you forget there was ugliness in the world. "Can I ask you something?" Lottie said. "Of course. Did you plan all of it? From the moment you found out about the affair, did you plan exactly how everything would play out?" Elias thought about that question. Had he planned Mara's death? Jensen's disappearance? The systematic destruction of his wife's life? "I planned to protect you," he said finally. "Everything else was just consequence. But you knew Mom couldn't handle losing everything. You knew she'd fall apart. I knew she was weak. I knew she'd made choices that had consequences. I didn't know she'd choose to drive into a river rather than face those consequences." "Do you feel guilty about that?" "I feel sorry that she couldn't find another way. But guilty? No. Lorska and Jensen? Elias was quiet for a long moment. Jensen was a predator who targeted a vulnerable woman and helped her destroy her family. What happened to him was justice. Even if you were the one who delivered that justice, especially if I was the one who delivered it. Marginalized nodded slowly. I thought that's what you'd say. Does that bother you? It should. The fact that it doesn't probably says something about me that I'm not proud of. It says you understand that sometimes the world is an ugly place that requires ugly solutions. Is that why you became a chimney sweep? To remind yourself that some things can be cleaned? Maybe. Or maybe I just like working with my hands. They sat in comfortable silence as darkness settled over the mountains. In the distance, they could hear the sound of the river that had claimed Mara's life, flowing endlessly toward the sea. I love you, Dad, Lottie said suddenly. I love you too, sweetheart. Even knowing what you're capable of, especially knowing what I'm capable of. Misused the next morning, Elias woke to find an envelope slipped under his front door. Inside was a single photograph, a picture of him and Jensen standing by Jensen's truck on that night 3 years ago. There was no note, no explanation, just the photograph and the unmistakable message. Someone knew. Elias studied the image carefully. It was taken from a distance, probably with a telephoto lens. The quality was poor, the faces barely recognizable in the darkness. But it was definitely him, definitely Jensen, definitely that night. He thought about the possibilities. Who could have taken this photo? Who would have been watching that night? The answer came to him gradually. Carlene Whitaker, Mara's former best friend, the woman who'd helped cover up the affair. She'd been suspicious of Elias from the beginning, convinced he'd done something to Jensen. If she'd been following him that night, if she'd witnessed their confrontation. Elias burned the photograph in his workshop furnace and went to work. But all day, as he cleaned chimneys and inspected furnaces, he thought about Carlene and what she might know and what she might do with that knowledge. That evening, he drove to Carlene's house. It was a small ranch-style home on the outskirts of town, neat and well-maintained. Her car was in the driveway, lights on in the living room. He knocked on the front door and waited. Carlene answered, wearing a bathrobe and slippers, her graying hair pulled back in a ponytail. When she saw him, her face went pale. Elias, Clang, we need to talk. She tried to close the door, but he put his foot in the frame. About what? About the photograph you left at my house this morning. I don't know what you're talking about. You do. You were there that night, weren't you? You followed me to Mountain View Road. Carlene's hands were shaking. I don't have to talk to you. No, you don't, but you're going to anyway. He pushed past her into the house, closing the door behind him. The living room was small and cluttered, filled with photos of grandchildren and ceramic figurines. Sit down, Carlene. I'm not sitting down. I want you to leave. I'll leave when we're finished talking. There's nothing to talk about. Elijah studied her face. She was terrified, but trying to hide it behind false bravado. You followed me that night because you suspected I knew about the affair. You wanted to see what I'd do when I confronted Jensen. I don't know what. You watched me talk to him. You saw him run into the woods. You heard him scream. Carlene's composure cracked. Tears started streaming down her face. I didn't know what to do, she whispered. I waited for hours, but he never came back out. So you took photos. I thought if something happened to him, there should be evidence. Evidence of what? Two men having a conversation on a public road? Evidence that you were the last person to see him alive. Manslaughter moved closer to her. What do you want, Carlene? I want justice for Jensen. Jensen got justice. He got exactly what he deserved. Crimson. He didn't deserve to die. Priesthood? Didn't he? He helped destroy a family. He stole from elderly people. He was a parasite who fed on other people's weakness. That doesn't mean he deserved to be murdered. Who said anything about murder? Jensen fell down a mine shaft while running away from a conversation he didn't want to have. That's not murder. That's natural selection. Carlene backed away from him. You're insane. Am I? Or am I just practical? I'm calling the police. Malignant. With what evidence? A blurry photograph that shows two men talking? That's not evidence of a crime, Carlene. That's evidence of a conversation. They'll investigate. They'll find something. They already investigated. For months. They found nothing because there's nothing to find. Carlene reached for her phone, but Elias was faster. He grabbed her wrist gently but firmly. Don't make me do something we'll both regret. Let go of me. In a minute. First, I need you to understand something. Mara is dead. Jensen is dead. Nothing you do now will bring either of them back. Punctuation. But nothing. You can keep your suspicions to yourself and live your life in peace. Or you can keep pushing and discover that some sleeping dogs are better left alone. Released her wrist and stepped back. I'm not threatening you, Carlene. I'm just explaining reality. Sometimes people have accidents. Sometimes they make poor choices that lead to unfortunate consequences. Like driving into rivers? Exactly like that. Carlene rubbed her wrist where he'd grabbed it. What about Lottie? What happens to her when she finds out what kind of man her father really is? Lottie already knows what kind of man I am. She's known for years. And she's okay with it? She understands that sometimes good people have to do ugly things to protect the people they love. She's as sick as you are. Relinquent. Or maybe she's just realistic about how the world works. Elias headed for the door, then turned back. Burn any other copies of that photograph, Carlene. Forget you were ever there that night. Move on with your life. And if I don't? Trang, then you'll discover that mine shafts aren't the only dangerous places in these mountains. He left her standing in her living room, trembling and alone. The next morning, Carlene's house burned down. The fire department called it an electrical fire, probably caused by faulty wiring in the basement. Carlene wasn't hurt. She'd been visiting her sister in Charleston when it happened. But everything was destroyed. Photos, documents, computers. If there had been other copies of that photograph, they were gone now. Elias read about the fire in the local newspaper while having coffee with Lottie. That's awful, Lottie said when he showed her the article. Wasn't she Mom's friend? Rems, they were close. Do you think she has insurance? I'm sure she does. These things usually work out. Lottie studied his face. You don't seem very surprised. Old houses burn down all the time, especially ones with outdated electrical systems. That afternoon, Carlene called Elias from her sister's house. You son of a bitch, she said without preamble. I'm sorry for your loss, Carlene. House fires are terrible tragedies. You burned down my house. I was working all day yesterday, installing a new furnace at the Morrison place. Dozens of witnesses. Presumption. You had someone else do it. Impartial. That's a serious accusation. I hope you have evidence to back it up. Arlene was quiet for a long moment. I get it, she said finally. Message received. I'm glad we understand each other. But this isn't over. Yes, it is. It's completely over. Transmissions she hung up without saying goodbye. 6 months later, Carlene moved to Florida to live with her sister permanently. She never returned to West Virginia. Lottie finished her master's degree and opened a private practice specializing in family therapy. Her first office was in a renovated Victorian house downtown, with tall windows and hardwood floors. I'm proud of you, Elias told her on opening day. Your mother would have been proud too. Do you really think so? I think she would have been proud of who you became, even if she couldn't understand how you got there. And what about you? Are you proud of who you became? Elias considered the question. Was he proud of the man he'd become? The man who'd systematically destroyed his wife's life? Who'd killed her lover and covered it up? Who'd driven Carlene from her home with threats and arson? I'm satisfied, he said finally. I protected what mattered most to me. I did what was necessary. Even if it made you into someone you never thought you could be. Especially Practice grew. She helped families navigate divorce, infidelity, loss. She was particularly good with teenagers who felt betrayed by their parents. Elias continued working as a chimney sweep. He was in his 60s now, but still strong, still methodical. People trusted him. He had a reputation for thoroughness, for finding problems other contractors missed. He never talked about the past, never mentioned Mara or Jensen, or the events that had shaped his life. To his customers, he was just a quiet man who did good work and minded his own business. But sometimes, late at night, he would sit in his workshop and think about choices and consequences, about the man he'd been and the man he'd become. He didn't regret anything. Regret was for people who hadn't thought through the implications of their actions. Every choice he'd made had been deliberate, calculated, necessary. The world was full of people like Mara and Jensen, selfish, destructive, willing to hurt others for their own gratification. Someone had to hold them accountable. Someone had to make sure they faced consequences. If that someone was him, so be it. On a cold December evening, 10 years after Mara's death, Lottie came to dinner with an announcement. "I'm getting married," she said over dessert. Elias looked up from his pie. "To whom?" "David Chen. He's a lawyer, criminal defense." "How long have you been seeing him?" 6 months. I wanted to be sure before I told you." "Are you sure?" Lottie smiled. "As sure as anyone can be about anything." Terminated. "Does he know about our family history?" Trembling. "He knows what he needs to know." Slamming. "Which is?" "That my mother had an affair and killed herself when I was 18. That my father raised me alone and taught me to be strong." "Nothing else?" "Nothing else that matters." Elias nodded. "When's the wedding?" "Spring. Small ceremony, just close friends and family." "I'd be honored to walk you down the aisle." "I was hoping you'd say that." Officer despite the porch, despite the cold, wrapped in blankets and watching snowfall. "Are you happy, Dad?" "I'm content." "That's not the same thing." "No, it's not. But it's enough." Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd handled things differently? If you'd just divorced Mom without everything else? No, I don't waste time on hypotheticals. But if you could go back, I can't go back. None of us can. We can only move forward with the consequences of our choices. And you can live with those consequences? I've been living with them for 10 years. What about when I have children? What will you tell them about their grandmother? Elias thought about that. I'll tell them she was complicated, that she made some bad choices but loved you very much. And about Jensen? I won't tell them anything about Jensen. Some stories don't need to be passed down. Prosecute was beautiful. Lottie wore her grandmother's dress, altered to fit her perfectly. David was a good man, honest, steady, the kind of person who would never hurt the people he loved. During the reception, several people mentioned how much Lottie resembled her mother. Elias agreed politely, but didn't elaborate. Mara was part of the past now, a ghost that only he and Lottie remembered. As the evening wound down, David approached Elias at the bar. "Thank you," David said, "for raising such an incredible woman." "She raised herself, mostly. I just tried not to get in the way." "Slamming Lottie tells me you went through some difficult times when she was younger." "Every family goes through difficult times. She's very protective of you. Won't let anyone say a bad word about her father. She's loyal, sometimes to a fault." Crimson studied Elias's face. "She also says you taught her that family comes first, always." "That's true. I want you to know that I understand that lesson, and I plan to live by it." Elias shook David's hand. "I'm glad to hear that. I know there would be consequences." "Yes," Elias said quietly. "There would be." David nodded and walked away, understanding passing between them like smoke. 5 years later, Lottie gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl. She named the girl Mara, after her mother. The boy she named Elias, after her father. "Are you sure about the names?" Elias asked when he first held his grandchildren. "I'm sure. They deserve to know where they came from. Even the complicated parts? Especially the complicated parts." As he rocked little Mara to sleep, Elias thought about legacy and inheritance. What would these children learn about their family history? What stories would they be told? He hoped they would grow up strong and honest like their mother. He hoped they would never have to make the kinds of choices he'd made. But if they did, he hoped they would have the courage to do what was necessary. Years passed. Elias aged into his 70s, then his 80s. His hair went completely white. His hands became gnarled with arthritis, but his mind remained sharp. He retired from chimney sweeping but stayed active, helping Lottie with the grandchildren, tending his garden, reading books about history and philosophy. Sometimes, on quiet evenings, he would sit on his porch and listen to the wind in the mountains. He would think about the choices he'd made, the prices he'd paid, the people he'd lost and saved. He had no regrets. The world was what it was, beautiful and ugly, kind and cruel, just and unjust. People like him existed to maintain the balance, to ensure that actions had consequences. On his 85th birthday, Lottie threw him a party. Friends and family gathered in his backyard, sharing stories and memories. His grandchildren, now teenagers, presented him with a photo album they'd made themselves. "To the best grandfather in the world," teenage Mara wrote in the inscription. "Thank you for always being there for us." "We love you, Grandpa," added young Elias. "You're our hero." That night, after everyone had gone home, Elias sat alone in his workshop. The photo album lay open on his workbench, filled with pictures of birthdays and holidays, graduations and achievements. A good life, by most measures. A family that loved him. Children who respected him. Grandchildren who saw him as a hero. They didn't know about the mine shaft, or the burned house, or the calculated destruction of their grandmother's life. They didn't need to know. Some truths were too heavy for young shoulders to carry. But someday, when they were older, when life had taught them about compromise and sacrifice, and the distance between ideal and reality, Lottie would tell them stories about their grandfather, about the man who'd protected his family at any cost. And maybe they would understand that heroes and villains weren't always different people. Sometimes they were the same person, viewed from different angles. On a cold morning in late November, Elias woke with chest pains. He managed to call Lottie before the heart attack brought him to his knees. She found him on the kitchen floor, still breathing but unconscious. The paramedics worked on him for 20 minutes before getting a pulse back. At the hospital, doctors delivered the news. Massive heart attack, significant damage. He might survive, but his quality of life would be severely compromised. What would he want? The doctor asked Lottie as they stood outside his room. He'd want to die on his own terms, she said without hesitation. They kept him comfortable, but didn't pursue aggressive treatment. Elias drifted in and out of consciousness for 3 days, sometimes lucid, sometimes lost in memories. On the final day, he was awake and alert when Lottie arrived. "How are you feeling?" she asked, taking his hand. "Like I'm ready," he said. His voice was weak but steady. "Ready for what?" "To stop carrying all this weight around." "What weight?" "The weight of knowing what I'm capable of. The weight of the choices I made." Reluctant Swedish his hand. "Are you afraid?" "No, I'm not afraid of dying. I'm just tired." "Do you want me to call the kids, David?" "No, just you. This conversation is just for us." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the rhythm of the heart monitor. "I need you to know," Elias said finally, "that everything I did to protect you. I know that. Even the things that made me into someone I never thought I could be, millions, I know that too. And I need you to know that I'd do it all again, every bit of it. I know. Will you be all right after I'm gone?" Lottie smiled through her tears. "You taught me to be strong, remember?" "I'll be fine." "And the grandchildren? They'll grow up knowing their grandfather was a man who loved his family more than anything else in the world. That's all I ever wanted to be. That's all you ever were." Elias closed his eyes. "I told her once, I don't do threats, I make promises." "Wenstrel, what did you promise her?" "That she'd understand what betrayal tasted like. That she'd lose everything that mattered to her." "And did she?" "Yes, she did." Those were his final words. The heart monitor flatlined at 3:47 a.m., and Elias Carr died as he had lived in his final years. Quietly, without fanfare, his secrets intact. The funeral was well attended. Customers whose chimneys he'd cleaned, neighbors who'd known him for decades, family and friends who remembered him as a devoted father and grandfather. The eulogy painted him as a simple man who'd worked hard and loved his family. No one mentioned the darkness that had lived inside him, the capacity for cold calculation and methodical revenge. That knowledge died with him, or almost did. Standing at the graveside, watching dirt being shoveled onto her father's coffin, Lottie felt the weight of inheritance settling on her shoulders. She was the keeper of the family secrets now, the guardian of truths too dangerous to speak aloud. Her children approached, tears in their eyes. "Grandpa was a good man, wasn't he, Mom?" young Mara asked. Lottie looked down at her daughter, 15 years old now, the same age Lottie had been when her world fell apart. "Yes, sweetheart. He was a very good man who did very hard things to protect the people he loved." "Refusal. What kind of hard things?" "The kind you hope you never have to understand." As they walked away from the cemetery, teenage Elias fell into step beside his mother. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Of course. When I'm older, will you tell me the real story about Grandpa? About what really happened with Grandma and why she died?" Lottie stopped walking. Her son was 16 now, tall and serious, with his grandfather's steady gray eyes. "Why do you want to know?" "A little kid anymore. And because I think understanding the truth about our family might be important someday." Lottie looked at her son, really looked at him. She saw something in his eyes that reminded her of her father, a kind of quiet determination, a willingness to do what was necessary. "Yes," she said finally. "When you're older, I'll tell you everything." "Everything?" "Everything." "And will you teach me? How to protect our family the way Grandpa protected us?" The question hung in the air between them like smoke from a chimney fire. "I hope I never have to," Lottie said. "But if the time comes, yes, I'll teach you." They walked home together in the fading light, 3 generations of cars carrying their secrets into an uncertain future. Behind them, fresh earth covered the grave of a man who'd learned that love could be as dangerous as hate, and that sometimes the greatest act of devotion was the willingness to become something monstrous. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of wood smoke and coming snow. In the distance, a chimney released a thin column of white smoke into the darkening sky. Someone keeping their family warm. Someone doing the necessary work of maintaining the fires that held back the cold. Some jobs, Elias had always said, were dirty work. But somebody had to do them, and somebody always would.